Hi, I'm Felicia, a UX UI designer here at Livefront, and today my goal is to turn error states into your new best friend. But let's be real for a second. Error states are inevitable, and when they do happen, they create every designer's worst nightmare, which is a frustrated user. The only thing we could do as designers is prepare and have a well thought out and designed error states. Before I take you through the steps on how to achieve this, let's start with some basics. So what is an error state? The main purpose is to communicate to the user that the action or response they were expecting did not occur. An error state on a mobile app can come in many forms such as alerts, inline messaging, or a whole screen takeover. No matter how killer your backend technology is, things can and will go wrong. This can come from technology failing or a user error. Some common reasons error states occur include an API failure. For example, search results were not returned from the API call, or it could be a network connection. For instance, the user's device is in airplane mode. Or lastly, it could be an invalid input. Let's say the user did not include an @ symbol in their email address field. I know, you're skeptical on how I'm going to make you love or at least tolerate error states, but stick with me. The best way to manage it all is to make a system. Here are the steps to set you up for successful error state handling. We'll dive into each step individually, starting with step 1, which is design your happy paths. This is the part we all like, so I'm starting you off easy. Get all your screens in pixel perfect, ready for development condition. Many of the error states will work in unison with the happy path design, so it's best to get those done first. Next, we have step 2, which is coordinate with your product manager and developers. This is the most intimidating phase, but your product managers and developers on your team will have more insights on the inner workings of the app, including what possibly can go wrong. Start to understand where the information you're displaying is coming from, and what actually has to happen behind the scenes for an action to be successful. Really get into the nitty-gritty of it. Now that you're cognitively overloaded, list out all your error states you uncovered with your team, and this is step 3. Give each state a unique name. I usually go with naming it after the API or the action that caused the failure. This can be done in Excel, Figma, or any program of your choice, but note this will turn into a table. The error states will be your y-axis, and your x-axis will consist of the following: type, which are those error state names, description, which you'll want to include a summary of what happens when it fails, level, which we'll get back to in a bit, and lastly, screens affected. Under here, you'll want to create a subcategory under this header with the names of all of your screens. And now that you have an understanding of what goes wrong under each error state, check off the screens that will be affected. This creates a nice little inventory of the screens you need to account for. Okay, I promise you made it through the hardest part of just wrapping your head around everything. Take a deep breath. But now we go back to it. You should know that all errors are not created equally. That means all errors shouldn't be handled equally. So for step 4, we're going to create a fun little classification guide. This can honestly be anything you want. Numbers, colors, emojis, but I'll stick with a number and color combo. I use 1 to 5 to rank severity, but find what works best for you, your product, and your team. Step 5, brainstorm general design patterns for each level. The more severe an error is, the more obnoxious, or noticeable, the error should be. I then brainstorm general design approaches for each level, keeping in mind how impactful the error handling should be. Assigning a design pattern to each level will create consistency between similar types of errors. Some common mobile error patterns include inline messaging, or we have the system dialogues or alerts, or we could use an urgent banner, or lastly, we could have a full screen message. Step 6, assign a level to each error state and apply those design patterns. Now we go back to your table. The last column we have left to fill is level. Looking at your description and number of screens affected, determine where that error should fall in your classification system. And this is where it all starts to come together. You have your happy path designs, a list of errors, inventory of the screens you need to design error states for, and a guide on what the design pattern should be for each. So start applying those error state design patterns. It might take a few iterations to get it right, but don't be afraid to modify, add, subtract levels and design patterns if needed. After this step, your first draft of error states will be complete, but you're not done yet. Step 7, review with your product manager and developers. Bring your handy-dandy error states table and designs back to your team for review. It's common to miss out on some error states the first time around, so don't fret if more come up. This is the beauty of the system you just created. Adding any more error states should be a breeze. As soon as you understand the new error, you could quickly classify it and know exactly what the design pattern will be. Step 8, define rules of hierarchy. A question that will be asked by your team: what happens if error A happens along with error B? Try to create clear rules using your classification system as a guide. For example, if level 1 happens with a level 3, level 1 will always take precedence. This will save you time since you do not need to individually make rules for each and every error state combination. It's also helpful to mock up examples of common simultaneously failing error states, so your team will have a visual reference. And step 9, organize your deliverable and share. Your hard work is done, and now you should show it all off. Create a shareable document that includes a classification system, your error states table, and design comps for each state. Okay, so you might not love error states by the end of this, but I promise you, your project manager, your QA team, and developers will sure love you. And more importantly, you're gonna love yourself now that you have a scalable system for an otherwise dreaded topic. Thank you so much for tuning in.